My name is Elena Hartman, and I'm 31 years old. By day, I'm a meticulous event planner, the kind of person who can turn a chaotic vision into a flawless experience down to the minute. From destination weddings to luxury corporate retreats, I'm known for my calm under pressure and attention to detail. Ironically, though, the same skill that makes me indispensable to clients has also made me the go-to problem solver in my family, whether I want to be or not. Christmas has always been my masterpiece. Every year, I pour my creativity and energy into transforming my mother's home into a winter wonderland, ensuring that everything feels magical, seamless, and memorable. But this year, I learned something that shattered that illusion and made me realize just how blind I'd been to the way my family truly saw me. I was at my mother's house one frosty December morning, arms full of garlands and boxes of ornaments, humming along to the carols playing softly from my phone. I'd come early for our Christmas planning session, something we did every year. The idea was to delegate tasks and make sure everything ran smoothly, but somehow it always ended with me doing most of the work. Still, I didn't mind. Or at least, I told myself I didn't. When I walked into the house, everything was quiet. I called out, "Mom, Abby, Tom?" No one answered. I set my boxes down by the front door and started toward the kitchen, following the sound of voices and laughter. That's when I heard my name. "Okay, so it's settled," my older sister Abigail said. "Elena will handle the kids during dinner. 5 children isn't too many. She's used to watching the twins anyway." My hand froze mid-air, fingers grazing the wall. My mom's voice chimed in next. "It makes sense. She's good with them, and she already has those activities planned." Those activities weren't supposed to be babysitting distractions. They were meant to be family games and crafts for everyone to enjoy together after dinner. Then came my younger brother, Tom. Perfect. She can feed the kids early and keep them entertained while we finally have a peaceful adult dinner for once. Last year, Lucas threw mashed potatoes across the table, and I didn't even taste my meal. My heart sank. "And she'll handle cleanup too, right?" Abigail asked casually. "She always does," my mom replied with a laugh. "You know how particular Elena is about dishes being done right." Their laughter echoed through the kitchen like nails on glass. I stood there, paralyzed as they continued. "I was thinking," Abigail said, "this year we open a nice bottle of wine, maybe even play some adult games afterward. It'll be nice to have a calm evening for once." "Yeah," Tom agreed, "without interruptions. No offense, but the kids love her. They'll be happy." My mother chuckled again. "Well, it's not like Elena has any other plans. She's single. She'll have time to help. We all have partners and kids to think about." The words stung deeper than I expected. Single. Available. The family helper by default. Tom's voice followed, sharp and careless. "Has she mentioned that photographer guy lately? What was his name, Jason? Thought that fizzled out." "Oh, that was never serious," Mom replied. "You know Elena, too busy with work to keep a relationship going." They kept talking, their tone light, their laughter steady, while I felt the air leave my lungs. I'd told them about Jason, about how he understood my demanding schedule, how he'd been kind, patient, and genuinely interested in my life. I'd even said I wanted to bring him to Christmas dinner this year. But clearly that conversation had meant nothing to them. Abigail's voice cut through my thoughts again. "So she'll do Santa duties too, right? Putting the gifts under the tree once the kids fall asleep?" "Of course," my mom said. "She always does. And breakfast too. The kids loved those snowman pancakes last year." It was like listening to a script for a show I'd been performing in for years, only now I realized I wasn't the star. I wasn't even supporting cast. I was the stagehand who worked behind the scenes so everyone else could shine. I backed away from the kitchen door, quiet as a shadow. No one saw me leave. By the time I got to my car, my heart was pounding. The cold December air bit my cheeks, but I didn't feel it. My hands shook as I started the engine. As I drove home, a familiar ache spread through my chest, one I'd ignored for too long. For years, I'd believed my family appreciated me for my generosity, my organization, my ability to fix things. But now I saw it clearly. They appreciated my usefulness, not me. I pulled into my driveway and sat there, staring blankly at the twinkling lights I'd strung along my porch the week before. My house was filled with boxes of handmade ornaments, labeled gifts, and carefully wrapped surprises, all for people who couldn't even bother to ask if I wanted to spend Christmas my own way. Tears welled in my eyes, but I forced them back. No, not this time. Inside, the glow of the Christmas lights reflected off my walls, making the house feel warm and peaceful, a sharp contrast to the turmoil inside me. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat at the dining table, surrounded by the remnants of weeks of preparation. Color-coded checklists, custom name cards, a budget spreadsheet that showed I'd already spent nearly $1,500 making the holiday perfect for everyone but me. For years I had accepted that role, the dependable single daughter who made everything easier for everyone else. When Abigail's twins needed last-minute childcare, I was there. When Tom's daughter had a science project due, I built the diorama myself. When Mom's pipes burst or her taxes got confusing, I dropped everything to fix it. And every time I told myself it was love, family love. That giving was my way of staying connected, but love shouldn't feel like servitude. The more I thought about it, the clearer the pattern became. The birthdays where I gifted my time instead of receiving one. The family vacations where I somehow ended up babysitting instead of relaxing. The endless text messages that started with, "Hey, you're good at this. Can you help?" A bitter laugh escaped me. This wasn't about Christmas anymore. This was about every single time I'd allowed myself to be invisible. The question wasn't what they were going to do this year. The question was what I was finally going to do about it. I stared at the blinking cursor on my phone as I considered texting my mother. I could confront them all, tell them what I'd heard, demand respect. But I knew exactly how that would play out. Abigail would call me dramatic. Tom would look guilty but stay silent. Mom would get teary-eyed, deflect, and make it about her grief or her stress. It would change nothing. Then my phone buzzed with a message from my best friend, Sophie. "You disappeared from the group chat. Everything okay?" I hesitated, then replied, "Not really. You won't believe what I overheard today." 10 minutes later, we were on a video call and I recounted everything. The laughter, the dismissive comments, the way my name had been tossed around like I was a free babysitter instead of a person. When I finished, Sophie's eyes were wide with disbelief. "You're kidding. They planned your Christmas for you without even asking?" Apparently, being single makes me the designated elf. "That's not okay, Elena. It's manipulative and cruel." I sighed. "I know, but what do I do? Cancel Christmas?" "Why not?" she shot back. "You're always the one keeping it alive. Maybe it's time they see what it's like without you." Her words hit me like a spark in dry tinder. What would happen if I just didn't show up? For the first time in my life, I smiled not out of politeness, but from a sense of pure, defiant possibility. I woke up the next morning with a new kind of clarity, the kind that comes after a long night of realizing you've been living for everyone but yourself. I brewed a cup of coffee, sat at my kitchen island, and opened my laptop. The cursor blinked on a blank search bar, waiting. I typed, "Christmas vacation last minute, adults only resort." The first results were predictable. Overpriced, sold out, or halfway across the world. But then halfway down the page I saw it, Azure Reef Resort, St. Lucia. 5 nights, oceanfront villa, last-minute cancellation discount. The photos showed white sand beaches, turquoise waters, hammocks strung between palm trees, and rooms with floor-to-ceiling windows facing the sea. It felt like the universe had just handed me a chance at peace. I called the number listed and spoke to a woman named Camille. "You're in luck," she said, her voice cheerful through the static. "Someone canceled 10 minutes ago. If you want the suite, I can hold it for 15 minutes. "I'll take it," I said, before my brain could come up with excuses. As I entered my credit card information, I realized my hands weren't shaking with guilt. They were trembling with exhilaration. For the first time in years, I was doing something just for me. Once the booking was confirmed, I leaned back in my chair and smiled. "Merry Christmas to me," I whispered. But as the adrenaline faded, another thought crept in. Jason. He'd been planning to join me at my family's dinner this year, and I hadn't told him about what I overheard yet. I worried he might think I was running away from my family instead of standing up to them. But then again, maybe he'd understand. He always did. I picked up my phone and called him. He answered on the second ring. "Morning, sunshine," he said in that calm, velvety voice that always made my chest tighten a little. "You sound serious. What's up?" I told him everything. Every cruel comment, every laugh I'd swallowed, every time my mother or siblings had treated me like a household appliance instead of a person. When I finished, there was silence for a few seconds. Then Jason said softly, "You've spent your whole life making things perfect for everyone else. Maybe it's time to make something perfect for yourself." "I actually just did," I said, unable to hold back a grin. "I booked a Christmas trip to St. Lucia." He chuckled. "By yourself?" "Not unless you'd like to come with me." There was a pause. And then he said the words that made me certain I'd made the right choice. "Elena, that sounds like the best idea you've ever had." The next few days were a blur of secret preparations. I kept up the illusion that everything was normal. When my mom called to ask about the grocery list for Christmas dinner, I told her I'd already arranged something special. She sounded pleasantly surprised but didn't press for details. "Well, that's lovely, honey. You always know how to make things magical," she said, her voice dripping with the same unearned sweetness that had fooled me for years. "Don't worry, Mom," I replied, forcing a smile she couldn't see. "Everything will be taken care of." What she didn't know was that everything would include me being 2,000 miles away when her perfect Christmas fell apart. Because I wasn't just going to skip Christmas, I was going to teach them something. The next morning, I called Ducasse Catering, the high-end company I often worked with for corporate events. The owner, Anthony, answered himself. "Elena, what a surprise this close to the holidays. Don't tell me you're planning another miracle last-minute gala." "Not this time," I said with a smile. "This one's personal." We spent half an hour planning what I called Operation Festive Chaos. I ordered 2 full meals, one for the adults, a 7-course gourmet dinner with wine pairings, and one for the kids, simple dishes like mac and cheese, chicken nuggets, and mini cupcakes. But here was the twist. The adult meal was full of high-maintenance reheating instructions, labeled with chef-level terminology. The kids' meal, on the other hand, came fully cooked and ready to eat cold if needed. "Are you sure you don't want to be there to supervise the delivery?" Anthony asked at the end. "Absolutely not," I replied. "That's the whole point." When I hung up, I felt lighter, freer. It wasn't about revenge, not exactly, it was about balance. They'd finally get to see how much invisible work went into the holidays they took for granted. Still, I couldn't resist one final touch. I decided to leave behind personalized letters, one for each of them, hidden in plain sight. Not angry letters, but truthful ones. The kind that might sting a little before they heal. For my mother, I wrote, "Mom, I love you deeply, but love isn't the same as servitude. I've spent years being your right hand because I wanted to help, not because I wanted to disappear. You raised me to be strong, but somewhere along the line, strength became silence. I can't keep playing that part anymore." For Abigail, I wrote, "You once told me I make everything look easy. It isn't. You assume I have endless time because I don't have children, but I have responsibilities too, ones I built myself. Being single doesn't mean my time belongs to you." For Tom, I wrote, "You used to defend me when we were kids. I miss that version of you. The man you've become hides behind politeness, watching others take advantage of me without saying a word. I hope someday you'll find your voice again." And finally, a short note for the entire family. "This year you'll get exactly what you asked for. A Christmas without my help. The decorations, food, and childcare are all arranged. Consider this a gift. The chance to see how much one person's effort holds your traditions together. Merry Christmas." By the time I sealed the envelopes, my suitcase was already packed. On December 23rd, I drove to my mother's house while she was at the grocery store. Using my spare key, I let myself in. I left the letters on the mantel above the fireplace, right beside the stockings I'd hung the week before. Then I took down the handmade ornaments that belonged to me, little things my father and I had made before he passed. Those were too precious to leave behind. Before leaving, I stood in the doorway for a moment, staring at the house that had been both my refuge and my prison. It smelled faintly of cinnamon and pine. For a fleeting second, I almost felt guilty. Then I remembered the laughter. "It's not like she has any other plans." And the guilt melted into something cleaner. Resolve. That night, Jason and I boarded a red-eye flight bound for St. Lucia. I watched the city lights fade beneath the plane's wing, a soft glow against the endless dark ocean. My phone buzzed with texts from my family. Mom asking what time I'd arrive to start cooking. Abigail confirming the kids' schedule. Tom sending a quick, "Need help setting up the table later?" I turned the phone off. When the plane landed the next morning, the Caribbean air hit me like a warm embrace. The scent of salt and hibiscus filled the breeze. Jason slipped his arm around my waist, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was running from something. I was running towards something better. We spent Christmas Eve lounging by the sea, sipping tropical drinks while the waves lapped softly at the shore. I hadn't felt that kind of peace since childhood, back when Christmas actually meant joy. Meanwhile, back home, my family's carefully planned evening was about to unravel in the most poetic way possible. Christmas morning in St. Lucia began with sunlight spilling across the turquoise horizon, waves whispering against the shore, and the faint laughter of children playing somewhere down the beach. For once, I wasn't the one making everything perfect. I was simply there, living it. Jason handed me a mug of coffee and smiled. "How does it feel?" I looked out at the endless sea and said, "Like freedom." He laughed softly. "The kind of freedom you should have had a long time ago." Back home, however, freedom wasn't exactly what my family was feeling. According to the text I would later find, the chaos started right on schedule. At precisely 3:58 p.m., Ducasse Catering's van pulled up to my mother's driveway. A driver in a crisp white uniform delivered 2 carefully labeled sets of containers, adult dinner, reheat instructions included, and children's menu, ready to serve. Mom signed for them, pleased but slightly confused. She'd assumed I'd be there to plate everything as usual. Abigail, ever the self-appointed general, took charge, waving off her confusion. "It's catering, Mom. How hard can it be?" Famous last words. At 4:30 p.m., the first problem appeared. The instructions for the adult dinner were written in precise culinary terminology. Sous vide salmon to be reheated at 140 degrees Celsius for 20 minutes in a water bath, and truffle butter should be tempered before serving. None of them had the faintest clue what those phrases meant. Thomas thought sous vide meant boil it. Abigail insisted it meant pan fry until crispy. Meanwhile, my mother, bless her heart, tried to microwave the truffle butter and ended up coating the inside of her microwave in an oily explosion of luxury. By 5:15, the kitchen looked like a war zone. The elegant adult meal had turned into a science experiment gone wrong. The beef Wellington was still cold in the center. The salmon looked suspiciously gray, and the artisanal jus had burned to the bottom of the pan. The children, meanwhile, were having the time of their lives. Their food required no prep. Mac and cheese, fries, cupcakes, juice boxes. While their parents argued over oven settings, the kids sat happily at the table, eating and giggling. Then came the next wave of disaster. The twins, high on sugar, decided to play pirates with their juice boxes, accidentally knocking over the adults' wine glasses. Red wine splashed across the white linen tablecloth I had personally picked out 2 weeks before. Abigail screamed. Thomas scolded. My mother demanded order. The 5 children erupted into chaos. By 6 p.m., the house was a whirlwind of noise, spilled food, and frustration. Abigail texted me then, her first message of the evening. Abigail. "Elena, where are you? Catering's a mess. Nothing's ready. Kids are driving us crazy." I didn't respond. I was sitting at a candlelit dinner on the beach, waves glimmering just beyond the table, Jason's hand brushing against mine. The resort staff had brought out grilled lobster, champagne, and a soft dessert that melted like sugar on my tongue. The contrast was delicious in every sense of the word. At 6:15, another message came through. "Mom, honey, the caterer says you arranged this. Can you help us figure out these instructions?" Then, a photo followed. My mother standing in the middle of the kitchen, surrounded by chaos, holding up a half-cooked roast and wearing the same frazzled look I had worn for years. I put my phone face down and smiled to myself. "Everything okay?" Jason asked. I nodded. "Everything's perfect." Back in Connecticut, the unraveling continued. When they finally sat down to eat at 7:45, the adults' plates were lukewarm, the sauce had curdled, and the once pristine table was streaked with butter and crumbs. The kids were restless, sticky, and cranky from sugar. That's when my mother finally noticed the envelopes on the fireplace mantel. She opened mine first. For a long moment, there was only silence. The others waited for her reaction, but her face had gone still, eyes scanning line after line of my handwriting. Then she reached for the second letter, Abigail's, then Thomas's. The room fell quiet except for the distant sound of the clock ticking above the mantel. My words filled the silence like a mirror being held up to them all. When my mother finally spoke, her voice trembled. She left. Left? Abigail frowned. What do you mean? She's not coming, Mom said, staring down at the note again. She's gone. Thomas took the letter from her, scanning it quickly. His brow furrowed. She's not coming at all. She's out of town. Abigail's jaw dropped. She wouldn't, but she had. I could almost picture it. My siblings frozen in disbelief. My mother standing in the glow of the Christmas lights she hadn't hung herself, surrounded by food she couldn't cook and a family she'd always assumed would orbit her command. That night, after dinner collapsed into silence and the children were finally put to bed, my mother sat alone by the tree. She looked around at the mess, the cold plates, the unwashed pans, the decorations slightly askew, and for the first time, she saw what I had seen every year, the invisible weight of keeping things beautiful. She picked up her phone again and typed one last message. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't realize how much you did. I just thought you enjoyed it. We all did. I read it from my suite, the sound of the ocean lulling me to calm. I didn't reply. Some apologies don't need answers right away. They need time to settle. Instead, I turned off my phone and joined Jason on the balcony. He was leaning against the railing, the moonlight soft across his face. They figure it out yet? He asked. I smiled faintly. They're learning. Think they'll change? Maybe not right away, I said, watching the waves crash in gentle rhythm. But at least now they'll understand that I'm not an endless resource. I'm a person. He reached for my hand. You did the right thing, Elena. I know, I whispered. For once, I really do. We spent the next few days exploring the island, snorkeling near coral reefs, taking sunset walks, eating tropical fruit for breakfast instead of rushing through coffee on the go. Each day, the tension in my chest loosened a little more. By the time we flew home, I wasn't angry anymore, just lighter. When I arrived back at my mother's house on New Year's Day, the air felt different, quieter, almost reverent. My mom opened the door before I could knock. Elena, she said softly, her eyes a little red, her voice trembling with something between guilt and gratitude. Hi, Mom. She stepped aside. Come in, sweetheart. The living room still smelled faintly of pine and cinnamon. The tree was half undecorated, the lights drooping slightly. On the mantel, my letters sat folded neatly beside a small plate of cookies and a card that read, "Thank you." Abigail and Thomas were there too, sitting awkwardly on the couch. The kids played quietly in the corner, a miracle in itself. Abigail was the first to speak. We read your letters, every word. You were right. We've been awful. Tom nodded. We didn't see it. You made everything look easy, and we took that for granted. I exhaled slowly. I didn't write those letters to shame you. I just needed you to see how it felt, being the one who keeps everything together while everyone else gets to relax. My mother's voice cracked. We should have noticed. Your father always did. I think we all leaned on you too much after he passed. The room went quiet. Outside, the wind rustled the bare branches. For once, they weren't trying to justify themselves. They were just listening. It wasn't perfect. It didn't erase the years of imbalance or erase the exhaustion I'd felt. But it was a start, one that felt honest. Mom reached for my hand. Next Christmas, no planning, no cooking, no kids' crafts, just you. You come as a guest. We'll handle everything. I smiled. We'll see about that. Jason arrived later that afternoon, carrying a bouquet of white lilies, my favorite. My family met him properly for the first time, and to my surprise, they treated him with genuine warmth. As we sat around the table, eating reheated leftovers this time, not gourmet feasts, I realized something quietly beautiful. I wasn't angry anymore because I no longer needed their approval to feel whole. That night, when I left my mother's house, she hugged me tightly at the door. You really did teach us something this year, she whispered. Maybe next time, I said softly. We'll all teach each other. When I got home, the Christmas lights I'd strung weeks ago still glowed faintly in the dark. I stood on my porch for a long time just breathing. No deadlines, no lists, no chaos. Just me, whole, calm, and finally free.